shall record and get going. So, starting again, hello and welcome everyone to Fire, Pants on Fire. It's time to talk about the stuff that bothers us about fire compliance. And we've got a great group of people joining us, some from council, some from the fire industry, some facility managers, and all sorts of FM helpers, suppliers, BWOF agents, and things like that. So, for those who don't know me, I'm Rosemary, Killip, or Rosie. I founded Building Networks in 2000. There you go. It was my Y2K project. And it was in the spirit of building educated clients about fire and building compliance. So you know what to do, who to ask, where to go for the info. And today my mission is to facilitate this conversation so that you get some good juicy info that helps you understand what to ask people who are supplying to you, or if you are a supplier, what you say and what you can't say, and if you're a council, what you should be doing as the referee in the middle. So that's me. And we have Ryan Peni. Welcome, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Ryan's known to many of you through his business as the managing director and founder of Niche FM, but Ryan does lots of other cool stuff as well. So he's a real entrepreneur. So any other things you'd like to say about your mission for being here this afternoon?
Absolutely. Yeah, I guess this is an awesome topic for all facilities managers, all for property professionals. And as someone who's been in the industry for a number of years now, I still get bamboozled with the amount of conflicting information that comes through from various industry specialists. But I think one of the main things that I will ask this question is around asking one question to two different industry experts and getting two different answers, and it can be quite confusing. So from a facilities management perspective, it'll be really good to share some of the experiences that I've had and also talk about some of the solutions that we've been able to find for those challenges.
Fantastic. Thanks, Ryan. Well, certainly, my mission is also about people. Do we say the same answer on a Monday as we do on a Friday? Yeah. It's all good. And again, sometimes we get new information and that changes our view. So welcome to you. So also joining us this afternoon is Grant McNeil. Grant's known to some of you as a fire consultant, business of compliance, his expertise in having gone from the ground up, from installing, contracting to consulting. And so he's been there, done that. We've known each other a long while. And so any other wonderful words of wisdom you'd like to kick us off with, Grant?
Yeah, so basically, the reason I've chosen to participate is because basically, having come from being a contractor, worked my way through, and I've been in a consulting role for a significant amount of time now, is just seeing that clients are getting the right outcomes, because that's one thing. Ryan's case of two differing points of view from two different parties, that often happens, and it's just a matter of people having realistic expectations and also doing what they should do to keep their buildings compliant, but also not also being led up the garden path as well. There's cases like where that has happened. So yeah, I'm just interested in participating, giving a factual view from the contractors, from a former contractor's point of view, but also having also worked on the facility side of my current employer. I've also got some value to add, I think, there as well. Cool.
Awesome. Thank you. Most certainly you do. So look, we've had some interesting people email us before this webinar, and as a participant, your opportunity is to use the chat function down the bottom to pop any questions you've got, and we'll try and address those as we go, or at least point you in that direction. So I just want to kick us off with a really interesting first end sort of topic. Is when it comes to the fire protection industry and fire documents, fire rules, there's a lot of misunderstandings. One of the things I see going on both sides of the industry, for council and building industry, and then with facilities and owners in the middle, is people come to us for expertise, right? They come for that kind of knowledge, but expecting a certain outcome. And I think, Grant, you made that point well. If you are a client that just wants the minimum, your organization just says, look, I'm only interested in doing the minimum I need to get across the line. You've got three real key things in compliance to kick off with. You've got the Building Act rules for WSP and other things. You've got fire regulation, and you've got workplace safety. So if you're an employer and an occupant of a building, not just an investor, you've got three things hammering you. And the fire industry can help you fix those three things. So if you go in and say, there's my big brief, some will come with a solution. But if we mix and match all those rules up, it gets really confusing. And many people have said, gosh, the rules are really grey, Rosie. No, they're actually not. They're actually quite straightforward. However, there's some things you have to think about, and often people just want yes and no answers. So, do I need to put a fire extinguisher in there? Do I need to upgrade my building? Someone's told me my fire alarm doesn't comply. Do I need to do that? And they're begging for a yes-no answer. So one of my first tips is, hey, stand back. What's your big context picture before you ask the question? You know, are we looking for a solution for you on the big picture? Because if I say yes or no here, it could impact you all the way over there without me knowing about it, and you haven't given me the brief. So always I'd say to people, be careful when you ask a question to couch the scenario so that we can give you the proper advice.
I think you raise a good point, Rosie, and especially from a facilities management point of view, when you're managing a facility or asset on behalf of a client, and it's common that you already have, or the client may already have a preconceived idea of what they want. So not what that needs to be done, but how much they want to spend, how much they, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's something that fair to say that we deal with on a case-by-case basis, but also on a regular basis. And that is, I think there is a stigma within that compliance space where, and I'm sure everyone's seen it in some capacity, where things change. And all of a sudden you've got a whole bunch of people there going, you need this, and this. And as a facilities manager, we've got to break through that and actually find out what is the right and most appropriate process that complies for the client. Unfortunately, in my experience, and thankfully I'm seeing less and less of it, it swings. So depending on the nature of what it is, but also what's happening in government and the changes, and perhaps there's been an incident or whatever, we also see, and we get this massive influx of professionals calling us and saying, hey, you need to do this, and this. It's legislation. As a fact, it's actually maybe a nice to have, or perhaps it's a standard rather than legislation. And that is, when I refer back to my comment prior about asking a question and getting two different answers back, it can be quite distorted in the answers that you get back through to clarify what their client actually needs to done. And in your experience, or yours, Grant, how do you find, or how do you deal with people coming to you? Firstly, I suppose, that want to maybe manipulate the answer to get the result that they want, which it happens, and we know it. Let's say it because it happens. I've seen it. And secondly, when you have completely mismatched information that is so far from each other, you know, I, as a facilities manager, and I admit I'm not a compliance expert. I sit back and I go, whoa. Right, I've got to actually go back and look at the facts and like, what's the purpose? What are we doing? What's legislation? What's a nice to have? What's a money-making exercise?
You see, that's an interesting point of view, because, like, you know, you look at it from a facilities point of view, okay, in legislation, at the bare minimum, you've got to maintain it in accordance with the Act. So you take it right back to basics. It's what that compliance schedule says, right? That's the ruling document. Now, you know, the Building Act, you know, quite clearly in 1991, when it came into effect, there's a nice little clause in there that all existing buildings, unless they are dangerous or unsanitary, were deemed to be compliant. So that means, consequently, because there is the issue of older building stock, and, you know, I've had to deal with the issue for clients where you've got an older building, it still complies, it still has the same system it had in it in 1990, where providers have actually said, oh, you need to upgrade your fire alarm, or you need to upgrade your sprinkler. Now, unless they're actually undertaking consentable work, there's a change of use, so there has to be a building consent, they don't need to necessarily retrospectively upgrade it. However, there's also the point of view of some of these nice to haves, maybe smart from an asset management point of view. You know, we've also got to take that part of the equation into it. Because if you look at the likes of, you know, if you've got an older building stock, it's going to cost you more to maintain it and to keep it running, then you're better to spend some money up front. So owners will also, you know, and facilities providers have also got to look at that perspective of it as well. But, you know, it comes down to best practice, and it's also what's fit for what the client's brief is. But, for example, retrospectively upgrading, you know, and I've had the case recently I'm not going to name names, where the client has a building that is sprinkler protected. It was installed to the old Fire Officers Committee's rules, so it's a very old installation. The compliance schedule quite clearly states standard of installation is the FOC rules. There's not many copies of that standard still around, and it quite clearly, that's what it was installed to. It was design approved at the time, and whereas the provider was requiring the client to spend an extraordinary high amount of money. Now, some of these things that their client has actually elected to do, and is doing some strengthening and adding, looking at the seismic restraint of their system, being in Wellington. But some of it, it's not a requirement. But then again, it comes down to the brief. It comes down to having that relationship and having your contractor also helping you and assisting you with making those right informed decisions, and not being afraid to challenge a decision like that as well. So,
I think that's really well put, Grant, and as everyone knows, that's absolutely how I would condone it too, is the building WAF system was about servicing and maintaining what you've got, not adding new. That's a whole different consent process. But one of the interesting things is we presupposed, as everyone did, that everything complied up till 1990 anyway. So sometimes you find yourself in some heck of a legacy situation where a 30, 40, 50-year-old building never frigging complied with nothing, no rules of anything. And so, it becomes a burden on the contractor to go, oh gosh, should I be signing this off? And where I think the confusion comes is people forget which hat they're wearing and a scope of work. If I'm wearing my hat and I'm your IQP, I'm going to tell you, this is a précis of the system or the ugly I've found. And my job is to say, does that ugly work still? Bells are ringing, switches work, wires are doing, and it's not to any known standard, but the thing I'm seeing in front of me is still activating in some way.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
And then we can have a second conversation of, it is 40, 50, 60, 70 years old, and it's got this much lifespan. I can still give you 12A, I can move things on, but not hold you to ransom with that 12A. And that seems a very interesting marker. This 12A, I'm not giving it to you because of this reason, which usually means lots of money. Well, hold on a minute. The 12A is about servicing and maintaining what they've got, not what they should have or what they should have had. And if you're finding an installation fault or some packet of ugly that doesn't work anymore, that's a whole separate conversation. Yeah. And it's like, so it's about defects. My key word is to the fire industry, stop saying something doesn't comply when you're doing a WAF check. You say that system is defective and it needs fixing, if it's true. And upgrading's a whole separate conversation for us.
That's a separate argument. But the thing is, what we've also got to realise here, and for a pragmatic point of view, is we're also looking after life safety systems. So they need to be maintained and working. Now, if a multi-storey building still has a type, is an original type 1, as in, in the older, 1984 alarm standard, and it basically is a series of bells with batteries and switches, it still essentially technically complies. Is it probably a good idea that the owner does actually upgrade it? Yes, but holding them to ransom about that, no, But, it also comes down to actually being pragmatic, having those relationships between both parties and actually having those discussions. But, holding, and actually, in terms of a defect, if or a non-compliance, if it's not complying to the standard it was originally installed to, and it needs that work done to ensure it actually does continue to perform as it was originally intended, then it should be done. But, retrospective upgrades, that actually requires a consent. And as I said, those three things here: is it dangerous or unsanitary? Has there been a change of use or a consent taken out? If you've got an older piece of building stock, as part of that consent, a fire engineering design will be done that'll specify what precautions need to be taken in the building, and that's the start of that process. But for example, another recent case, owner, they've got a building, it's got partial smoke detection in it. Now, that was part of the original fire engineering design, supplementary smoke detection. That was done in that way so people could actually allow for increased escape links as part of the original design. The fire protection provider involved with this one wouldn't sign the 12A because, for the pure and simple reason that they didn't feel that the building was adequately protected and it had to be fully protected in accordance with the standard. But the thing is, the original consented fire design called for that partial protection, not for full coverage to 4512. So the thing here is, it's also down to what was consented and what is actually required. Not this, the standard isn't necessarily the law, the act is, and that's the thing. So standards can be referenced by the acts. The building code is a means of the acceptable solution are a means of compliance. They're not the only way of actually complying. There's engineered solutions. So that's another thing people need to take into account. But it's also, having the knowledge base, and that's one thing in the industry, increased knowledge base, and people actually understanding the legislation and actually everything around it. And that's something that, the industry itself needs to actually, in my view, needs to work on and improve.
Mm. So you mentioned quickly, and I don't know if I'm going off topic here. So, and this one's for you as well, Rosie. Both mentioned the compliance schedule, and I do have a specific question about that from someone, which I'll ask in a second. But the other one is around the 12A, and I've had 1, 2, 3, 4 questions about this specific thing, and that is fire companies holding you to ransom over a 12A with work that has been quoted. They won't sign a 12A off. You may have found out within the week before it's due to expire. Whatever scenario it is, what's your take on that?
Look, I think fire is 9 of 15 things. It's not the random one like audio loops. And, you'd think if a fire company was doing a big part of business with you as a facilities management company or as a client owner, that you'd have a heads up on any showstoppers coming up in the year. So
Yep.
Look, we're going to go and do your biennial survey at this month. We're going to do that. And yeah, there might be some packet of ugly coming up. But our 12A is based on the defects and operations of your specified system, not upgrades. And we've had someone just put in the chat just there, their question is, how do I get this across to the company that's holding up that 12A and want to change the system? It's like, okay, show them the Building Act, show them the compliance schedule handbook section that says no existing upgrades, and go up the food chain, apart from the technicians who may have been on site, the IQP signatory, because every IQP is a signatory guy or gal who's not on site anymore but signs those 12As. They know this like you, me, they know this, they know the stuff, but it's just kind of keeps bubbling up, and there shouldn't be any confusion. And if it's pressured, I think, high enough, and go, excuse me, please explain. And in the service agreements and the relationship management, this is a relationship business, not a building compliance business. What's your relationship like with somebody who keeps holding you to ransom all the time?
Yep.
It's like the relationship's got to be a trust one, that I trust you to look after our building and to not dick me around.
You're spot on about that, and Grant also mentioned it previously around the relationship side of what we do, and that's talking to people. Get out there and actually ask the questions, talk about it. Now, let's just say, playing devil's advocate, for example, for all those other facilities managers that I know have been in my position, where the relationship is okay, potentially it could be a lot better, but they do hold you to ransom. So what can a facilities manager do to get a healthy resolution? I know we've covered what the standard, what the act is and all that sort of thing, and we've all been in that situation where we've exhausted options and it still hasn't resolved itself. Rosie, what can they do to get a resolution?
Look, I think the first things first. People bring the council in and wait for the council to find them, like a naughty little school child waiting for the principal to find a ditch school. I think right front foot it. Ring the council WAF team if that's what this is about, and say, listen, our WAF's going to be a bit buggered up this year. We've got this going on and we're trying to manage it. You know what? Can you, council, if you've got that time and resource, bring somebody on site and have a site meeting with us, and let's sort this all out together, rather than them and us, fight, and waste everyone's time. That's my thing. Grant, what are your take on it?
Well, see, that's an interesting one because, back to your original point, right? Okay, like, having been involved with the issuing of warrants for a considerable amount of time, that comes up to the week of the warrant and suddenly, no, your 12As aren't going to be issued. We're not getting them. There's defects. It happens to a lot of building owners, okay? And working through that situation, that's where you've actually got to engage with the council, talk to the council. But the important thing here is you can look at those conditions of engagement between, the contractor and the owner. Quite clear, you should make sure that work is done ahead of time. So there is a no surprises approach. So have that annual inspection done early, not the week of or after the warrant in some cases. and don't tolerate it, but work with, it's all about relationships. And it is an industry of relationships. If, I quite often have to go into bat for clients where providers let them down, and they're actually, they have some significant work to do, but it's making the council aware. Yes, the council can take infringement action, and the Act is very clear, what should and shouldn't happen. But it's also about having those relationships in place and making sure that those steps and if it has to go back to the contract, that work, those inspections are done ahead of time. So there is a no surprises approach. It's about employing the right contracts and having the right relationships with those people. As an IQP myself, if something wasn't wrong, I wouldn't be bullied into actually signing something off. That's the last thing I'd do. I've lost clients because I've actually said, no, I'm not signing it. It's not right. They've gone and seeked another provider. They're welcome to doing that, but it also comes down to your personal ethics as well. So there's a lot of different factors in this discussion. But the simple fact is, myself and my team, we do actually manage providers in a couple of significant buildings on behalf, including the management of the fire protection contractors on some significant buildings. And to be honest, if the contract is not performing, then we'll actually take action about that. If it means actually putting some censure in place and actually a bit of performance management or some KPIs, or worst case replacing them, we've had to do that. But the thing is, it's about having the right relationships and having a no surprises approach, because if you let it get to that situation where the council is going to take infringement action, they have every right to, because the important thing here is we are looking at public safety. Everyone has the right to go to work, come home the next day, or go to the movie theatre and actually leave and get home safely. These systems are there for a reason. And it's like, and I'm going off topic a bit here, the letter in lieu of a 12A, everyone's favourite bugbear, right? Now, to be honest, I wouldn't wipe my butt with one in some of the ones I see. And
Me
I've
too.
got a bit of a... But the point is, though, there's a reason, and people, I often hear the argument from, other people in the industry that, that's the only thing you can do. It's not actually in the legislation. But the thing is, it is a mechanism. But it's also about having a negotiation with the council. Will they accept it in this situation on a case-by-case basis? Because by and large, we won't issue a warrant unless there's a full set of 12As. Now, the reason why, that document there isn't a document like that in the legislation. And a lot of people say, we need to have a letter in lieu or a Part 12A. There's no such thing as a Part 12A. A 12A is issued for 12 months. It's not issued for 1 month. It's not issued for 3 months. It's issued for a year to say it's complied. Everything's been carried out in the past year. So there's a reason why the Act is actually written like that, and that document is actually in the schedule of approved documents the way it is. It's because non-compliance isn't supposed to happen. Okay, it's there for a reason. It's there to the reason the Act was written that way was to actually maintain people's safety.
And
anyway,
you're speaking words to my ears, and that I feel the same. And it's lost the mana. BWOFs have lost the mana that they should have because of the report in lieu, in my humble view. And so we've got a whole lot of questions, and they're all coming up. So I'm going to try and deal with them as we go and throw them in. So we've had a whole bunch of questions about what we've been talking about. So I hope we've answered that. Fire provider continually asking me to spend thousands of dollars of upgrades. Upgrade fire alarm. It's been there for 25 years. It's still working. Why are they making me spend more money? Biennial survey carried out. Now they say I have to upgrade. Heritage building. My company says I need to spend 30K. The insurer is pressuring me to upgrade my system. Do I have to? I've got an old system with partial coverage. At what point does it become non-compliant? They're telling me that my installed fire alarm that's brand new needs more work on it, and they won't issue a 12A for it. Wow, there you go. All of the above, people. What we've been talking about is there's a pushback here of saying, I'm sorry, hold on a minute. What kind of system do I have? How old is it? Does it still function, or is it defective? And nothing, it can carry on ad infinitum until some point someone goes, oh God, now it's obsolete. Really? There's no parts we can get ever, anywhere in China, anywhere in the world for this thing? Why, from a capital asset management point of view, was no one telling me that my fire alarm system would be obsolescent in 2019? Ryan, what's your take on that one?
Now you're talking my language. Right, and there's a question that's come in spot on with that, which is from personal experiences, organisations with large campuses forget to add into their OPEX budgets a program for replacement. Now, this is something that we're hammering hard out with clients at the moment, which is whole of life planning, long-term maintenance planning. And that's looking at the whole of the building, not just fire, not just lifts, not just cleaning, air conditioning, the whole thing. And it's critically important to make sure in my view, that you have a full view of everything. So to answer that question, that I think it is from Dave, around how to deal with that in personal experiences, I face it all the time. And one of the challenges is getting people out of that reactive firefighting, mind the pun, mode, and actually looking at a long-term
strategic
view of, what needs to be done. It is a challenge. It is something that I definitely have seen in the last 13, 14 years starting to take a different shape. Although in saying that, and specific to this question, I still see a lot of the component or sub-elements of fire protection not being included. And that may be looking at, all right, let's look at a big ticket item, replacing a fire sprinkler system, for example. That's all very well and good, but what about everything else that goes into to making that building run? So we're hopefully studying, in the work that we're doing, hopefully starting to transform some of the thinking. Some organisations have it down absolutely perfect, but when it comes to looking at the overall strategic value that you're offering, absolutely, facilities, everyone that's involved in the property in some regard should be hammering in that you need to program, you need to plan. There should be no surprises, apart from the odd, thing that in the world we're in, things break, things happen, but plan.
Well, it's about having an asset management. Sorry, Rosie. It's about having an asset management point of view about it, because if you've got a panel that's been in there for 20 years, it's likely it is getting to the end of its useful life. Replacement components may not be available, but it's that whole reactive versus using an asset management type point of view, maintaining it. CapEx versus OpEx. If you budget for it and actually say, okay, I'm going to put away the money to actually deal with this in this year, and you actually use some sensible asset management principles, and you actually, because that's one thing that's often overlooked when asset management plans are done for buildings, is the fire protection. People don't even consider it.
Or even more so, the electrical cabling to the building, the electrical boards, or the water supply pressure. How many of you have experienced a situation when the building was built, there was nothing else around you, and the water supply was great? Now there's suburbia right up against you, and that water supply pressure is really different. And so that becomes a real an issue for the facility manager. It's like, hello, you can see the suburb coming. It's about looking outside the square, going, what impact is that going to have on our supply? Because inevitably that sprinkler company at some point is going to say, sorry, we can't issue a 12A because you haven't got enough water pressure at the boundary.
Exactly. I've got clients that have had to retrospectively put in tanks and pumps because because the council supplies actually isn't delivering enough pressure anymore. But that's the reality of the environment we live in. But again,
that doesn't just come, right? That's like surprise today. I mean, if there's been a fault today, yes, but you can see the developments coming. And that's about the proactive stuff I like to say, hold on, let's forecast what could happen around us so that we can preempt this stuff rather than go right to the 12A WAF birthday this month, this year, go, oh crap, the water supply isn't valid anymore,
That's a fair point, and I've seen it as well, where people actually manage their 12 months around that period, the building run of fitness, and I've seen facilities managers do it. But it goes back also to the evolution of, let's say asset management for argument's sake, the evolution of where we're going and having that strategic view of the world and being proactive and getting away from what's happening just now, but happening over the next, social responsibility, but relationships, understanding what's going on. And I'm a firm believer, and speaking on, as a facilities manager, you need to know what's going on. It's not, in my view of the world, rightly or wrongly, the turning up to work and looking after this piece of, room is just no longer part of it. You're looking at this, what's going on in the community, what's happening, what's moving in, what are the developments, as you say, Grant, with the change in industry coming in. And I think you're just a lot more richer to understand what's going on, and therefore planning properly, strategically, and looking at a bigger view of the world. So you don't have these surprises, which aren't really surprises because, as you say, Rosie, they've been planned. They don't just happen. You just don't get up in the morning and there's a retailer sitting, a big box retailer next door to you. It just doesn't happen like that.
And I think it was interesting too, just a point you made, Grant, you know, when Christchurch and all that Canterbury stuff happened, particularly for us in the lower North Island, like really, we didn't learn anything. We go, oh, not that the buildings fell down, but seismic restraints as an issue, right? Should have gone sweeping up the country to all those areas with high earthquake probability and said, hey, it would be good to do a proactive survey of your services to see if all of that stuff in that ceiling void is restrained. But we just sat there like ducks, and then 2013-14, Kaikoura happens and everyone in Wellington goes, oh, what a surprise. And like no one proactively did it. And Grant, I'd love your view on this one. Passive fire freaks everyone out. Smoke and fire protection. Those rules changed in 2005-6. So we've had 13 years to get our what's-its together. And most people have waited to go, I don't know what it looks like, and I'll wait for the IQP to find it. Why don't facilities people take the front foot and go, shit, the law's changed. We need someone to do a building survey for us to say what nick are they in before we get the surprise 12A misnomer from the IQP.
Yeah, see that's quite a contentious issue, and one I could talk around for hours, because there's different points of view and there's different expectations from various territorial authorities around the country about what exactly passive fire constitutes. Like some TAs, because I work in myself in areas where some TAs have the view it's only along the escape route, whereas some TAs have the view it's the whole building. Some owners have the view it's the whole building, and some owners also have the view it's only along the escape route. And it's about managing expectations, but it's also actually understanding what you're looking at. And there's been a bit of a paradigm shift within the industry in terms of people actually having a more awareness of it, and what it actually means, because it is an important system that's actually there to to protect the building occupants and allow them to safely escape the building. We've got to remember why it's there. And you've got the difference in building stock. You've got some buildings that are installed quite some time ago, and you've also got buildings that are actually more recent construction. Now you'll probably find some of these older buildings that were installed to NZS 1900 Chapter 5. They comply with the design that when they were installed, and there's often a lot of good material around the requirements at the time when that building was constructed. There's also older heritage buildings, but the important thing to realise here is we're there to maintain a life safety system and inspect it, but it's the level of inspection, and that's one thing I think the industry has given a lot more maturity around, is that how far we actually go and how far we should go. From a facilities management point of view, I think from my view, I think a lot more facilities managers and building owners are actually becoming a lot more aware of it, and are actually taking a more pragmatic view. Like I've inspected brand new buildings that are absolute dogs, but I've also inspected old buildings that are actually pristine. It's also anything that's been installed in the last 10 years, I would say should the bar should be up there, but that's not always the case. That's also around the certification and the sign-off process when CCC is actually issued as well, is actually making sure those checks and balances and have actually been undertaken. Producer statements issued, and I can keep going for a little bit longer.
I'm going to pause you for 5 seconds to say we could do a whole nother webinar on sign-offs and handovers between projects to FM. I just want to stop a moment because there's a number of stuff being banged in there. So thank you, team who are watching, for the chat and the QA that I've got. And I want to make one point clear because it keeps popping up. People keep asking questions. What do I do when blah, blah, blah happens and someone says it's non-compliant? I'm going to go right back to what the three of us said at the beginning. Wrong question. It's not about compliance. It's the IQP is there to say, I confirm that system's been serviced, tested and maintained for the previous 12 months. It's not about being non-compliant. That's a different conversation. And so the conversation here is, oh, well, something's happened in the year. We've had a flood, we've had an earthquake, or we're under renovation, and the 12A won't get issued because of that. It's nothing to do with it, right? That's nothing to do with the 12A. Oh, we've missed some inspections. Here's a quick tip from Rosie, and we've got online training about it. The 12A is not the only thing you're looking for, peeps. 2 years worth of records that support the 12A. Where's the other IQP annual report? Where's the test certs? Where's any logs in the cloud anywhere else that says, oh, for these 2 months of the year, the building was under a something, something. So that floor wasn't inspected. How was the alarm isolated then? What was going on? Was the alarm defunct for 2 months? There's a story narrative, and the 12A is the end of the sandwich. There's test certificates, there's log books, and all those things that back up the issuing of a 12A. It's got nothing to do with it unless you say our specified system was defective as a result of this event.
If there's work going, give the example, if there's work going on the building, there's a consent, there's also a certificate of public use.
There's a lot of checks and balances, right?
There's a lot of checks and balances in place. And again, it's very situational. There isn't one glove that fits all issues. But again, have that discussion with the council. What would you like to see in this situation? Most council officers, aren't the boogeyman. They're there to help. They're there to help you as well, and actually explain the situation. Be pragmatic about it. Often there can be a workaround, but it all comes back to, is the system functioning as it's intended? Because it's their life safety systems, and they should be maintained accordingly. But when there's construction work happening in a building, there should, and the building's still occupied, there should be a CPU. Different TAs handle, and I do a lot of work with a lot of different TAs. All handle things slightly differently. They all have a slightly different interpretation, but it's about working and having those discussions. And again, it's down to relationships and actually working through those problems rather than, I've seen a situation where one fire company is working in a building where another fire company has the maintenance contract, and, again, get the situation, we're not going to issue a 12A. So, there's different workarounds, and it's about having those discussions and actually talking through it. And, engaging with all the parties and actually talking about it, and actually working out a solution and being pragmatic about it. Because, the council wants the right outcome as well. Councils are there to maintain a function and actually ensure the safety of these buildings. There's a legal obligation for the owner to actually maintain and continue to maintain them. And it's all there for public safety, the safety of the building occupants. That's the important thing we've got to draw it back to. And again, back to the compliance schedule and what that says.
I think there's a couple of things here too, and I just want to pick up some of the comments that are coming through. Someone's made a really kind of important point too, is it ethical to issue a WOF and a 12A when there's work and remedials to be done? It's not legal. Therefore, in my view, it's not ethical. If somebody said, oh, well, hold on, the insurer's holding the person to ransom about it. Well, hold on, that's about new stuff. It's not about what they've got. So the WOF and the 12A is about what you got, not what you're going to have. And if the insurer and you suck it up and pressure yourself into changing your system, it needs a new consent and a new fire analysis. So somebody else asked, well, hold on, how come a fire report comes through from a fire engineer who's never been to the building? For fork's sake, before you start going out getting fire engineers, you've got fire IQPs and the fire consultants that are on your team to tell you. They'll know. Or their FPIS reports or the AON reports tell you, here's the system and the vintage you've got. So you've got information under your fingertips, a bit of a crowd control. Let's have a little bit of powwow, team, and pull the team in, because the resource is there, right there, to get the information that's needed. Another little question somebody said is about, hold on, the approved evacuation scheme, make sure there's a current WOF first. Rubbish. The building's brand new, it won't have a WOF, and you need a fire evacuation scheme. So they need to put a scheme in place, and over the year, their fire rules are different from ROF rules. That fire evacuation notice has nothing to do with the Building Act. It's fire evacuation regulations, always has been, and that's a whole nother topic in itself.
Right. There's some very, very good questions. I'm just scanning through them here.
Yeah.
And just to recap on a couple of the comments you made, and there's one here that I just want to cover, if I can find it, from Sue. And I think you did touch base on it very briefly, which was, how do you deal with insurance companies giving pressure to install or provide upgrades even though it's not required? Now, that's something that I've dealt with as well, in a particular situation where I've had fire services company go in there and actually say you don't need it. And this is the example I mentioned at the beginning with two different informations, and the insurance company and going in there and say, actually, if you don't do this, you're not going to get insurance. So what's your views on that one for Sue?
Yeah, look, I mean, my view is this, is like, okay, insurers probably will give you cover if you pay enough premium, or they might have exclusions, right? So that's a whole different business deal. And it's like, well, I can still have my WAF current, I can still have my building occupied, it's not unsafe, but my insurance premium's way up here. And so,
Well, you're not insured.
or you're not insured at all. And I'm sure people take all those choices, right? Or, is it what we're talking about, relationship management? Was that a surprise? Who's your broker? Who's bloody dealing with the insurance options? Are there anyone in the world that will insure your building rather than the crew that's telling you to upgrade it? Just asking.
Absolutely.
It's about risk. The insurance company's looking at it from a risk profile point of view, which is their business and their area of expertise. If they want to keep insuring you, and you want their insurance, you're going to need to look at carrying out the works that they need to do. Do you need to look for another provider, or do you go without insurance? I wouldn't ever recommend that to anyone. But it's a multifaceted beast, that one, and that's my view on it. Does it comply with the Act? It does comply. If it complies with the Act, it complies with the Act and legislation. That's the point. That's the point of view. But insurance is another issue as well, and that's also, it's up to the insurer whether or not they're going to actually cover that risk.
I think it's also interesting, someone's raised the issue of the other. So they've got clean documents, they've got clean 12As, issued the WAF, nevertheless, and then they've found out that some water pump isn't working or some other things are not working. I mean, here's the FM question. Where is the record keeping of what you've got? Where's the records kept? Do you ever walk with anyone? And someone else asked the question, do you think FM people are strategic or reactive? I think traditionally it's been a reactive business, and Ryan's telling us about the strategic direction, but somewhere in the middle, right down dirty in the operations, who's across the record keeping and the down dirty, making sure things are done? Because my experience within the building industry proper is we need a lot more supervision and a lot more up our backsides, because people don't tend to do something unless somebody's right there. It's just, or we don't know to do it. We're grabbing anyone we can to be on the team. And it's not the IQP, it's someone down here who's doing their very best, but maybe doesn't have our glasses of risk on and does what they think is the proper thing to do. Who knew that fire pump wasn't working? Maybe it was a technician. Did that person escalate it to their boss, who escalated it to their boss, who said, shit, we better tell the client that we've got a major, and so what? My fire pump's not working. Grant, so what? What does it matter?
So fix it. That's what it comes down to,
And a sense of urgency, right? I imagine, Ryan, people have 2 million things to do every week as an FM person, and so there's like toilets blocked, lifts, people stuck in lift. Oh yeah, that's right, fire pumps not working. The priority and the urgency, that's the thing we don't communicate well.
That's right. I mean, yes, and to go further on to the question about, I think, did you say FM strategic, reactive, or combination of both? I think that's what that question. My personal belief is that the FM, and I'm really happy that Nix is on the line too, because Nix is a fantastic facilities manager who shed a bit more information on this. And the answer is yes, and there's been a lot of maturity and evolution in the facilities management space. It isn't just someone that turns up to work every day and with a toolbox, the old mentality of it, and going out and doing it. There's a lot of great things that are happening. However, yes, there's still a combination of both strategic and reactive. And as you say, Rosie, there's a lot of things going on in a building. And if you are lucky enough to have a national portfolio, hopefully you've got some people that are helping you out. There's a whole bunch of things that are going on. But the trick is, and I go back to what I said before, is plan. Be very, very conscious of the time. Make sure you're adding value. And the FM has a seat at the table making those decisions. And if you don't have that seat at the table, force yourself in, because at the end of the day, you're the one that knows what's going on. And when it comes to compliance, there's no negotiation. Get in there, tell them how it is.
Look, I agree with you. I find that really stunning. And both the local government property people I've met as private sector people, it's like, oh, we always wait to receive a building after it's constructed. I'm like, but who knows the building most intimately? You? Were you at the design table? No. Were your providers who you love, trust, and use at the table who know that work on those systems? No. Why not? Like, muscle your way in on that, because again, if it's a renovation and there's heritage issues and complexities, you know, maybe asbestos, earthquake prone, goodness, the whole shebang, you're the ones been dealing with it all the time. And you know, the architects or the fire engineers may have never actually physically been to the building. So you know, they've got their place and you've got your place, and it seems just such a no-brainer that this is a team approach to a team solution. And one more person, a council person who's going to process that consent, who's going to inspect that building, someone with a council regulatory eye who can go, stop people, that's a fantastic idea, but have you thought about the implications of the cost of that innovative compliance versus traditional compliance? This is the evidence we'll need. So, you know, this is how long this will take. This is the CPU implications. You know, there's a whole lot of everything going on there. So, yeah, I think, Grant, you've, in your consulting role, you've dealt with all those good, ugly things.
I've certainly dealt with some challenging ones, but yeah, can't really discuss on them. But you know, sprinkler systems that don't work when installed properly, you know, significant remediation projects for stuff like that. But you know, I've also been involved in some projects where, you know, right from the start, you know, I've been involved where, you know, as an IQP and a compliance consultant, you know, right through the whole project, right through to the, you know, to completion, and we're an owner's actually, or the end user's actually been involved. And you know, it comes down to maturity, you know, and actually, as Ryan said, having the right people involved at the table. Because if you have that, then you get less surprises. I'm not saying you're never going to get no surprises, but it comes back to that. You know, we'll talk about that. You know, WAF time, and you know, you're not getting a 12A because XYZ system isn't compliant. There's major remedial works being done. You could have that situation could easily be mitigated if there's some communication up front and that inspection is done ahead of time. You know, if a contractor's not performing, then perhaps there's some discussions need to be had between both parties. But it's a matter of, you know, working together in a collaborative fashion. It's no one person's role to actually fill this process. There's multiple parties involved, and it's about getting them working together cohesively, and you know, and not being afraid to escalate an issue.
That's right.
Absolutely, just nailed it on the head there. And that is, it is a collaborative approach. It's about relationships, it's about working together. And more times than I like to count, there are so many operators that work in isolation and don't ask the question. And one thing that I think we're getting very good at in this country, especially around the facilities management space, is actually picking up the phone and saying, hey, have you dealt with this before? Regardless of whether they're a competitor, regardless of whether they work in a completely different industry. And that's very valuable. But the other thing is, just to touch on with, again, from an FM perspective, is that relationship with councils. Those guys are awesome. And we've dealt with some fantastic operators in various TAs across the country who, hey, just want to get stuff done and help you out. Don't be afraid to call them. You know, they're there to help, and they're a wealth of information, hugely.
And it's the thing too about what they see across, you know, the issue. Often they're dealing with building consent applicants who aren't you, right? They're the designers. And I always say to FM people, consider being the applicant. You know, going through the process, if you've never taken out a consent at home, you don't know what's involved yourself, let alone the responsibilities at work. Next has just made a really valid thing. I just want to read that out because it's kind of really sums it all up. Early FM and subcontractor engagement has saved money and time in almost every project she's been involved with. Begin with the end in mind, and remember, the end isn't building completion. The end is the building being used by tenants. Damn straight, girlfriend, that's the way. And it's the thing about workplace safety, lifts off from where we take, you know, here's the building, and then now the presupposing the building's got its together, and the workplace safety lifts from there. And it's a whole pie of compliance, but also just remember the focus. Everyone wants a building occupied. No one likes an empty building in town. No one likes all the hassle, the drag that comes with it. Yet, in the middle of this, there's probably 3 simple questions to ask somebody, I think, which is, okay, if you're going to tell me something, sorry, where does that rule come from? Is that in the Building Act or regs, any other regs? Is it a council policy? Is it our company policy? Like, what's the go? Is it in a standard or some code of practice that's involved with your industry group? And you know what? Show me the records and walk with me. You know, those are the 3 things. Where does that come from? Show me the information and let's walk in the building and go see and show me what you're saying. Show me either a photo or let's go together so I can see what's going down. Because rather than the emails, the texters, the WhatsApps, the nightmares, the night sleeps that are broken, people just get it together. You're in the building. It's probably right under your nose, and just walk out of your office and go find it. If you've got national contracts, whoever's on site, take a photo of what you've just said. Don't send me an email. Take a photo and I go, oh, wow. Or I go, what? Then I can see for myself.
Absolutely. Oh, that's so good. The other question that's I've had come through, and I hope I don't misinterpret this, is IQP signing off 12As that work for the company that installed it. That's all I've got. So I'm assuming the company's gone and they've got an IQP that works in there, they sign it off. Or in this case, they don't sign it off because perhaps
it's allowable. I mean, the thing is, it may sound bizarre to people, and it relates to another earlier question which we've come to, which is, should the guys and gals doing inspections be the same as doing the maintenance? That is different in the lift industry. That's how it rolls. Survey versus maintenance company. Who is the installation company? IQPs are allowed to be everything, right? They're allowed to be the designer, the installer, and the checker, and the IQP. So that's allowable under the law. If you doubt the integrity and the trust of that company or those people, then again, it comes right back to what you've said, right? About relationships. Go walk with them, see what they're doing. I've got another one here about compliance schedules, about specified systems. And I just want to say, sometimes for me, the fire reports I read are lovely and wordy, but don't go down in the dirty about the specified systems. They leave it to installers to figure it out. And this one is a swap out around emergency lights, about frequencies. And the email goes on to a number of details about the issues, and is it valid to go from a change in frequencies of inspections? And my first question is, where the hell's the compliance schedule? Grant, you said that before. Before we start arguing about everything, show me the compliance schedule. Let's see what the council thinks is there, what info we've got, and even if the council's right or wrong. Councils have had a big kick up the bum from MB about upgrading compliance schedules. They can't do that without your help as facility managers. Your IQPs and WAF agents are the conduit between you both. And sometimes councils are just writing things down like NZS blah, blah, blah. And actually, just what Grant said, the building's friggin' antique and it was never meeting that standard. And then the IQP comes later and goes, oh my God, council wants you to comply with NZS blah, blah, blah. So now we've got upgrades. Yeah. And that's how the cycle starts.
But that's about accuracy of the compliance schedule. The one you mentioned about emergency lighting, what standard was it installed to? Is the system still there? Is it still able to be maintained? Does it need an upgrade? We can see it's a multifaceted beast. There is no black or white. There is often quite sometimes some grey, but it's a matter of having discussions about it and talking about it. Sometimes, systems do need to be upgraded if there's, if it can't be maintained. There's also this thing of, I've also heard of fire providers, and this isn't isolated to just that industry, that have conducted major upgrades of a building without a consent, gone from a type 2 to full type 5 throughout the building, or type 4 and full smoke detection. But again, that should have been consented. And that process for the owner, and actually the owner actually understanding the actual whole process. It's about them being taken on a journey and actually understanding it and having the right parties talking to them for it. Because, it's a bugger after the fact to apply for a certificate of acceptance when they should have actually taken out a consent. And did they need that system?
And look, Grant, that's classic, right? I get it when a homeowner rings a plumber or a builder and says, I want something done, and that gets confused because you're a homeowner. But if you're a facility manager, Ryan, would you not, it doesn't go, oh, today we're going to spend $100,000 on the upgrade of something. Like, that just doesn't come out of my handbag. Would somebody not go, when we're starting to talk about a lot of chunk of change, I think we might need a building consent.
Yeah, and that's the difference between. And look, let's be completely frank. That's the difference between a very good facilities manager and who's someone just going through the motions. And like any industry, you have both sides of it, and it's about just being a lot more, going back to what I said before, being a lot more proactive in the approach you're doing and looking at the bigger picture. And as Nick's rightly said, the end use. It's been used by X, Y, Z. Let's focus on that goal. There's a lot of varying opinions in what should and shouldn't be done. We face it as well. We obviously cover a broad range of different systems and services within the facilities management space. But I think building compliance is something that, again, in my opinion, should be known, understood, accepted, embrace it, learn it. And I've had a very good experience with some of the building officers and councils, one in particular who actually got on the front foot with the facilities managers and said, right, we are shit at our building compliance accuracy. Please help us. And that's awesome. That's really good. And that's seen it from the other side as well. So there is a change, there is evolution, which is really good. But it goes back into being a little bit more, understanding what the purpose is and making sure you've got the bigger picture in mind. Because I can't think of one experience where I've been sitting there and 2 minutes later I've said I need $100,000 on something. You know.
Yeah. I'm open if you want to donate. I've got a good charity. It's called Rosemary, Killip Limited Inc. But we are so close to our final time, and we could talk for hours and hours about this. So I think we've covered all sorts of really good stuff, from facility management focus to the council focus, the fire contractors industry, and all the rest of it. And there's been some great answers and questions. I want to finish with this one, which is just a comment rather than a question, where someone has said, look, there's 3 key issues in choosing the right fire consultant, and I would say installer or any other provider of services. The first one is obviously their experience and ability to provide pragmatic solutions in coping with change. Second is their technical ability and knowledge, and again, you might need that to be assessed a little bit. And then the third is the objectives, like what's their business objectives? Do they want a quick cashy, a poor quality, a simple project, or do they have the ability to deal with that complexity for the lifetime cycle of our building? And look, it's about asking smart questions, isn't it? And that's part of the thing that I think we've shared. We've shared a whole lot of ideas of you could be asking different questions rather than when you receive something of does it comply, or it doesn't comply, go, actually, sorry, I'm going to ask you a different question in the procurement of your services right off the get. I'm going to interview you like it was for a job interview, not just to get our friggin' waff on the wall.
Yep.
So last comments from you, Grant, and last comments from you, Ryan, and then we'll sign off.
Yeah, thanks for the discussion, guys. Again, we could go on about this for hours, but I look forward to the next one, and thanks for the opportunity. So hopefully
Fantastic.
I added some value.
You sure did. Thanks, Grant.
And likewise, it's good to get a perspective from the facility side as well, and I'm really excited about how a lot of this is evolving, and the discussion's been had. I mean, the discussion's fantastic. I'm looking at the attendees list here, and it's really, really awesome to see some great people in there who give a shit, and want to know and do it. And I just urge, questions, pick up the phone, ask, talk to people. But let's do another one of these. This is
I'm up for it, and it's always good. And look, if you don't do that already, Ryan and I are really kind of quite out there on LinkedIn, posting things and doing things. So if you want to connect with us up on there and share some ideas beyond this conversation, we're open for it. If you'd like another one of these webinars, I'm happy to host it. So just let us know. We'll send an email out with the link, so you can send this on to your other colleagues who haven't seen it. And you go out there, go well, and make sure we get buildings that work for people, because that's what it's about, the people.
people.
Cool. Thanks all.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
See you.
Yes.